You're walking down a wet alleyway in 1620s Edinburgh. Horse shit soaks into your boots. The smell of meat rotting in the butcher's stall clings to your breath. A crowd gathers at the pillory post, but no one's selling bread or preaching. This isn't market day. This is punishment day. They drag her out of the jail like she's already dead Margaret Young, accused of lewd conduct, scolding, and lustful speech. Which really just means she made the wrong man feel uncomfortable. Her face is pale, lips cracked. You think she's trembling. She's not. Her muscles are locking up from fear and cold, like a corpse stiffening mid-collapse. Then comes the device. A jagged iron cage shaped like a muzzle, hinged like a trap, lined with spikes. One of them curves inwards, resting against the tongue. The Scold's bridle. They force her head inside it, clamp it tight. She can't close her mouth, can't speak. If she tries, the spike drives deeper, piercing, shredding. A bloody gag masquerading as justice. The crowd laughs. A priest spits. A merchant throws pig entrails. You try to look away, but your feet won't move. Something inside you, maybe, the part that still feels human, wants to scream. But you don't. No one does. That's the point. What happens to a society that punishes desire by turning it into street theater? You see the bridle clamp tighter. She jerks. A tooth drops onto the cobblestones. The screaming still hasn't started, because it can't. Tease the secret. It's not just about silence. Here's the part they don't carve into the wooden stocks. The Scold's bridle wasn't just about shutting women up. It was about controlling how they spoke, what they wanted, who they defied. You could be whipped for infidelity, hanged for prostitution. But if you were too loud, too lustful, too visible, they made a public monument of your humiliation. One bridle found in Lancaster bore a twisted inscription. The tongue it waggeth far too wide, for peace and virtue to abide. They called it a moral correction, a domestic tool. Sometimes they even made husbands the executioners, so the pain came gift, wrapped in God's blessing. But here's the secret most don't want to admit. The bridle wasn't just punishment, it was entertainment. A grotesque performance where humiliation became the town's favorite spectator sport. And the people watching weren't disgusted, they were thrilled. It turned sexual repression into ritualized sadism and called it order. In the next town over, a woman is accused of spiritual fornication. Her punishment? Not a bridle. Something far worse, and it involves water. Cucking stool baptism. You're standing on a wooden bridge over a freezing canal. It's 1683 in Devonshire. The air tastes like chimney soot and cabbage water. A wooden contraption creaks beside you like a seesaw crossed with a torture swing. The cucking stool. They've tied a woman to it. Eliza Wilkes, age 30, midwife, mother, accused of unchaste behavior, which could mean anything. Caught kissing her apprentice, accused of witchcraft. Or maybe she just had a child out of wedlock. A town crier lists her sins. Children throw mud. A drunkard sings a filthy rhyme. And then they lower her. The chair tips. Her body plunges into the canal. Her skirts balloon. The crowd roars. She stays under. 10 seconds. 20. 30. She thrashes back up, choking, gagging. Her mouth open, begging for air. Then they dunk her again. No time to breathe. No time to scream. Just cold water filling every cavity. This isn't punishment. It's drowning rehearsal. You ask the man beside you what she did. He shrugs. Something about sin, or speech, or seduction. This is what makes it worse. Nobody even remembers the crime. Just the spectacle. This wasn't a private sentence. It was a public drama. Punishment as theater. Baptism by humiliation. You think water is the worst of it? Wait until iron starts going inside the body. The iron phallus and the treatment of temptation. You're in a stone chamber lit by greasy candles, somewhere in the Holy Roman Empire. Year, 1710. A physician in priest's robes stirs vinegar with iron tongs. A young girl lies shackled to the examination table. Her name is Greta, age 14. The diagnosis? Hysteria by lustful temptation. The cure? A device called the chastity fork. 2 sharp prongs, one aimed at the sternum, the other at the groin. Bound in place with iron belts. Every time she slouches or spreads her thighs, stabbing pain. A reminder that even posture must be pure. But Greta's sentence doesn't end there. For continued displays of arousal, the local inquisitor prescribes a punishment borrowed from older Roman customs. They call it the phallus of repentance. An iron dildo, cold forged and etched with biblical verses, heated until the metal glows red. Inserted as therapy for lustful dreams. The girl screams once, then loses consciousness. The chamber smells like burning meat. To them, this is healing. They believe they're burning the devil out of her body. That if a woman's body brings temptation, then that body must be broken. Iron as penance, pain as purification, pleasure twisted into punishment. And if she dies, well, at least she die virtuous. The same year, in Venice, a courtesan is sentenced for seducing a nobleman. But she's too powerful to burn. So they invent something new and parade her through the city first. The whore of Venice. You're standing in a Venetian plaza in 1710, sun glaring off gold-plated domes. But the real spectacle isn't the basilica. It's the woman chained to a crimson cart. Her name is Livia Rossetti, a courtesan. Famous for her wit, her gowns, her lovers noblemen, cardinals, foreign diplomats. She's scandalous, untouchable, magnetic. But now, she's bleeding from the mouth and stripped to the waist. Her painted skin smeared with ash. Her crime? Overuse of seductive faculties. That's not a joke. That's how the official writ reads. The sentence, procession di vergogna, procession of shame. She's not just being punished, she's being exhibited. Paraded down the Grand Canal on a barge shaped like a casket. At each checkpoint, she's forced to kiss a crucifix, spit wine, and confess her sins to a cheering mob. But the worst part isn't the ritual. It's that everyone knows her. She was the seductress in silk, the secret fantasy of priests and poets. And now, they shout whore from balconies like it's the new opera. As she nears the Bridge of Sighs, they strap something around her hips. A mock phallus, gilded, sculpted, grotesque. This isn't justice, it's mockery, it's pageantry. Sex turned into punishment porn for the masses. Livia isn't being shamed for desire. She's being devoured by a culture addicted to her downfall. Later that night, a masked physician visits her cell with an iron tool designed for retraining the womb. What he does leaves her unable to walk permanently. Hidden motive. Why they really did it. Let's drop the moral pretense for a second. They said it was about purity, that public shaming cured sin, that women needed taming, like animals gone rabid with lust. But that's not the truth. The truth? These devices, Scold's bridles, cucking stools, iron phalluses, weren't about stopping immorality. They were about reinforcing hierarchy. Who gets to speak? Who gets to desire? Who gets to survive it? Every one of these punishments came with an audience. That's not accidental. That's psychological warfare. These were warnings, written in skin and blood. You're not really being punished for what you did. You're being punished to teach other people what they're not allowed to be. Lust when male was indulgence. A sin, sure but forgivable. Lust when female, that was a threat. To the family line. To property inheritance. To male control. So society invented tools to turn women into walking billboards for shame. Scold, too much? Bridle, flirt too freely? Stool, dream at night and wake up wet? Iron phallus. We act like the medieval mind was just misinformed. No, they knew exactly what they were doing because it worked. In the archives of Nuremberg, one case stands out. A woman who was punished with 2 devices at once because her husband demanded it in writing. The double sentence, Nuremberg, 1597. You step into a court record that shouldn't exist. Handwritten, smudged ink, red wax seal of a merchant guild. The name on the page: Katharina Meyer, age 36, married, childless, accused of provocative mannerisms, incitement to adultery, and spiritual discord within the household. Translation: her husband didn't like her laughing too loudly at the tavern. But this man was no farmer. He was a silver guildmaster. And he made a formal request. Let her be fitted with the tongue cage and dipped, such that her body cools and her tongue stills. And so they did it. They bridle her with a spike-braced Scold's mask, clamp it tight, chain her arms, then carry her in the same bridle, still strapped to a wooden cucking stool, and dunk her in the town pond. Imagine it. You're choking, gagging, metal slicing your tongue, lungs burning, crowd roaring. She survives the first dunk. The second, she doesn't surface for 47 seconds. When she does, she's seizing. They stop. Not out of mercy, but because they don't want a corpse spoiling their ritual. She doesn't die, but she doesn't speak again. Ever. And the man? He remarries within the year. Her fate? Unrecorded. Probably buried in a pauper's grave under a false name. And yet, for decades after, men cite her punishment as precedent. The twist? That same bridle was reused for a nun who dared question her abbess. And that case led to an unexpected revolt, when silence backfired. Now we're in Avignon, 1742, a place cloaked in incense and hypocrisy. The Inquisition still has teeth here, and they've just bitten into something nasty. Sister Albine, a cloistered nun, writes a private letter to her brother. In it, she accuses the abbess of forbidden acts of discipline involving young novices and religious instruments. One of them? A repurposed chastity fork. The letter is intercepted. Albine is seized, stripped, tried for heresy and pride. Not fornication, because that would indict the abbess, but pride, for daring to speak. They want to make an example of her, and they pull the Scold's bridle out of a dusty reliquary for the task. Same one from Nuremberg, still engraved. Still bloodstained. They force her into it. But this time, something cracks. The novices, those same girls who'd been violated, begin to scream. They run into the courtyard, tear down prayer banners, smash pews. One of them throws the abbess's jeweled crozier into the baptismal font. What was meant as a silencing becomes a revolt. Villagers gather. The clergy barricade themselves inside. 2 days later, local authorities intervene and quietly remove both the abbess and the bishop overseeing her. Albine? She's never seen again. The girls? Dispersed to other convents. But the device? It disappears. Gone, stolen, hidden, buried, or maybe waiting. In the 1800s, a wealthy British collector claims to possess an iron mask worn by a nun executed for lust. And it's still warm. The Furnace Chair, Paris, 1821. You walk into a secret chamber beneath an old hospital, long since closed to the public. The floor is damp. You hear the hiss of coal. The room isn't for healing, it's for discipline. They called it a hygienic correctional device in the ledgers. But let's be honest, it's a furnace chair. Wrought iron, seat hollowed out. Slits underneath where hot coals are fed. A woman is strapped to it, naked from the waist down, arms and legs bound in leather belts. She was a seamstress. 25. Accused by her employer of provoking indecent arousal in the workplace. Translation: he got hard. She got punished. The goal wasn't to kill her, just to teach her a lesson. The seat warms slowly, then sears, then burns. First the thighs, then the groin. And the worst part? The administrators insisted she sing hymns during the ordeal. It was meant to keep her mentally aligned with virtue. Imagine burning alive while being forced to praise the Lord. A nun watches with a rosary. A physician takes notes. A scribe documents it all for scientific study. This wasn't torture behind closed doors. This was justified, endorsed, written into the margins of 19th century sexual medicine. Her screams echoed for hours. But the chair didn't disappear. It was bought, cleaned, and sent to an asylum in Prussia, where it would be used again. On men. Aftershock begins when men became the spectacle. Prussia, 1846. A storm rolls over a bleak asylum tucked into the hills near Dresden. For decades, this place experimented with corrective therapy for deviants. But now, there's a shift. Because now men are starting to appear in the records. One patient, Friedrich Lenz, accused of impure self-pleasure and seductive gazes toward the kitchen boy. Diagnosis: nymphomania of the eyes. The treatment? You guessed it. They strap him to the furnace chair. But this time, they insert a metal phallus into his rectum. Connected to the seat, it conducts heat. The goal wasn't to stop pleasure. The goal was to turn desire into terror. They didn't call it sin anymore. They called it moral inversion. And that made it worse because now it was cloaked in science. You start to realize the devices never went away. They just got smarter, more sterile, more clinical. Even the language got colder. They called orgasms erotic episodes. Lust became a dysregulation of impulse control. Punishment got a new name: treatment. And yet, underneath the white coats and marble walls, it was still the same old sickness. Shame as control. Sex as sin. Pain as purification. Cliffhanger. You think that's dark? Wait until Victorian England gets its hands on this logic and invents something so twisted it shocks even Queen Victoria herself. Collapse. The Exhibition of Depravity, London, 1868. You step into a private chamber at the Royal Bethlehem Hospital. The room smells like chalk and stale air. Inside is a glass display case, and behind it, the speculum of the damned. That's not hyperbole. That's literally what they called it in the registrar. It's an oversized metal device, half speculum, half caliper, engraved with warnings about lust. Mounted with small blades to discourage collapse of the vaginal wall during therapeutic application. Translation: it cuts. While inserted, they used it on women diagnosed with erotic delusions. These were housemaids caught masturbating, widows who had sex dreams, girls who bled at the wrong time of month. But here's the twist. They didn't just use it. They showed it off. Queen Victoria herself was reportedly given a tour of the asylum's medical wing, where she passed by a tray of devices used for immoral correction. A young female patient, nude from the waist down, was posed like a mannequin. The Queen turned away. Some say she fainted. Others say she said nothing, but she let it continue. Because the crown needed order, and if order meant iron inside wombs, so be it. This was no longer about sinners. It was about state control of the body. What happens when these same ideas cross the ocean and become part of moral hygiene campaigns in America? One word: sterilization. Consequences cross continents. From iron to scalpel, now you're in California. 1909, and you're sitting in a courtroom where the state just approved its first mass sterilization law. No more bridles, no more chairs, just scalpels and paperwork. The target? Moral defectives. People locked in institutions for homosexuality, promiscuity, or just not wanting marriage. One girl, 17 years old, raped by her uncle, was committed as feeble-minded. Her reward? Forced sterilization. The man who authorized it said, "The lust that blooms in filth must be cleansed at the root." That's not metaphor. That's eugenics. That's science dipped in Victorian filth. And it became a national model. Over the next 30 years, more than 60,000 people were sterilized in the jus meni for sexual degeneracy. It wasn't about justice. It was about fear. Fear of bodies that didn't obey. Of women who wouldn't yield. Of desire that didn't ask permission. And it all started with iron, with shame, with spectacle. The bridle and stool were gone. But the impulse? Still alive. Just wearing cleaner gloves. You think it ended there? In 2023, a leaked document shows a private prison in Louisiana using an obedience chair on women inmates. It's padded, electric, and reportedly still designed to keep their legs closed.